Howdy, my fellow makers of things and stuff. This electric bike has done over 30 miles now, and it hasn't missed a beat. It's done really well. I've been having far too much fun on this. Indeed, I checked it, and it registers 11 on the funometer. But what's scary is the funometer goes to only 9. In recent days, I've added a wee bit of extra capacity to the battery bank on this. In the early days, it had just one of these 4 amp hour 14 volt batteries. It now has 2, so I've got a range of about 4-ish, 5-ish miles-ish. I've also got a larger field exciter battery here. This one has double the capacity pretty much, at 11 volts, so I can go twice as far, so it's good for at least 8 or 9 miles. After each ride I put this back in my XK Detect 380 drone and have a fly around the farm for a bit of fun. Another little enhancement that took place recently is the knob is no longer in the speed controller. Instead it's been replaced with this throttle device. It's a little thumb lever. I've got some examples of it here. Right hand side thumb lever, left hand side one, and the twist grip version. So if I give this a wee bit of twist, you can see it moving there. You'd think these have a potentiometer in them, but no, they're actually linear Hall effect devices. As you move the throttle, it moves a bar magnet, a curved one, past a linear Hall effect sensor, which registers a DC voltage starting at about 0.8 and going to about 4.8. That voltage trend is delivered to this little fellow here. A couple of weekends ago, a friend of mine came along and we fitted this and wired it up and went for a ride on the bike. It was great, chasing donkeys up and down the driveway. I'll just switch on the electricities and we can operate the throttle, and we can scream along at 12 miles an hour. Yippee! Ain't that pretty? I figure the next little improvement will be to have this switch indexed to the throttle, so as when I start to move the throttle it essentially switches that on, which engages the field coil here. That will save power, plus also noise and heating and all the other stuff. And it will have another benefit too, as I'm noticing with these speed controllers, because of the way they come from the factory, without reprogramming, they tend to apply the brakes. So if you throttle up then throttle down, it suddenly applies the brakes a moment later, which brings you to a rather rapid stop and delivers quite a shock load to the transmission. Now, talking of controllers, this is the size of controller that's currently on the bike. It's a 6-cell 60 amp ESC. I've recently obtained this little fellow. It's a 12 cell 120 amp ESC. So that's basically 4 times the power handling capacity of this little fella, which means I should be able to go quite a lot faster. As what I want to do quite soon is go from the 14 volt battery currently on the bike to this 36 volt pack. What's cool is this one has lights on it. Cool. Inside that is 30 cells of this sort. This is 2 cells of 18650 size. This contains 30 of them. And my idea is to either take that battery apart and spread the cells around inside this frame, or simply get this battery and a couple more like it and put those in the frame, sort of like this. If I can make that work economically. Each one of these by itself has more than twice the capacity of those combined, and they're a lot safer too. These are less likely to catch fire when abused. than these are, but that stated, it still pays to treat these with due respect. There's a lot of power in this thing, and you don't want to short it out or do anything stupid with it. Now, if I can possibly figure it out, I like to work out a way of putting some side panels on this to attach them to this in some way without drilling holes if I possibly can. And inside, of course, would be the electronics and the batteries. And just maybe in this area, a friend of mine suggested, I could put the motor controller and a cooling fan. That way it's close to the motor, and I can get rid of all this hash of wires and parts and produce a neater build. So that's what I would like to do in the near future. The 36 volts should increase the speed of this from the current stately 12 miles an hour to something more like 20-ish, maybe 24 miles an hour, maybe, roughly. It's hard to know for sure. Other enhancements came to mind on a recent ride. I was dealing with traffic and I needed to indicate for the sake of courtesy. And it occurred to me that what I need to do as one of the enhancements for this little fellow is to make up indicators, one to go over the top of this brake or just in front of it, and another to go in front of this one. And what you do to trigger them is, while you're riding, you need to indicate, you simply raise one finger onto the brake and stick it forward a little bit. It pushes a button inside the indicator, which will be about here. And of course, you know, the same sort of thing for this. What that lets you do is start that indicator flashing, sort of like on a car. Hopefully the motorist will see that, and your duty of courtesy as a road user has been duly discharged. Well, that's the plan anyway. Whether those indicators need to be copied to the back of the bike, I don't really know, but that will come perhaps a little later once I've dealt with all this. This really is quite a mess at the moment. Anyway, fellas and fella-isses, here's hoping you enjoyed your little update on the e-bike project. I have to admit that this is actually working better than I imagined it would. When I started on this, I had no idea whether the alternator would actually serve as a good and reliable motor. But to my absolute delight, and that of many people who have stopped me for a chat on the side of the road about this, it has performed fantastically. So I'm hoping I can start a little craze here in New Zealand where the supply of alternators suddenly dries up and millions of bikes find themselves out on the road. Okay, fellas and fella-isses, ciao for now.